So we're going to cover utilizing a pick today. I prefer using a 2mm pick because a 2mm pick is substantial. You can use a lighter pick when you play the bass guitar, but if you're just starting out with a pick, I would prefer that you would use something thicker. And the rationale behind that is that thinner picks tend to flex. So when you use a thicker pick and you strike the string, as soon as the pick slides off the string, you know the note's going to sound. When you use a lighter pick because of the flex in the pick, sometimes that'll throw the timing off. So if you're just getting started, I would recommend that you start with a 2mm pick. The next thing that I want to cover is actually how I hold the pick. So you have a lot of choices. You can hold it so that the pointy end strikes the strings. I actually prefer to use the rounded end here. So this particular corner. And the rationale behind that is, as you strike the strings, if you use the pointy end, you tend to want to rotate out so that the tip clears. Whereas if you use the rounded end, you're more prone to strike straight through. And again, you can use a pick just like you would do finger style playing. You can do rest strokes where the pick rests on the string below. Or you can do free strokes. So, and we'll cover that a little bit more in depth. But I prefer using the rounded end. So the next thing that I want to cover is kind of like the motion of the right hand, because picking is definitely right hand intensive. And of course there's synchronizing it to the left hand, but we're going to concentrate on the right hand. There are a lot of different theories on how you should pick. Some people think that you should pick kind of like you're stirring a cup of tea to get the alternate picking motion. I prefer to use the larger muscle of the forearm and the bicep in conjunction together with just a little flick of the wrist. That's just because if you play for a long time, it'll help with fatigue because you're using a larger muscle group and you'll be able to have a more consistent sound for a longer length of time. So my picking technique looks something like this. So if you're first starting out with your picking, one of the things that I did was I would put my hands on the body of the guitar so that there would be some consistency because the hand has a tendency of moving up and down, which could change or alter the way that you strike the strings. So if you anchor your hand on the bass, it'll help you with not making the outward movement because you're always anchored to the body and you'll have a point of reference. And then later, as you progress, you can remove your fingers. So that's kind of my concept on utilizing the right hand and something that may help you in terms of adding some accuracy to the way that you strike the strings. The next thing that I'm going to cover is alternate picking and economy of picking. So when we play with our fingers, we alternate. Right, so the same thing happens with a pick, where you want to alternate up and down. And chromatic scales are a great way to practice this. So let's talk about that. Guitarists use this thing that's called economy of picking. So that's what I want to discuss for a little bit, economy of picking. And what economy of picking is, and let me talk about it in a term that we all understand, raking. So if we were to do an ascending line, and then we wanted to descend, and we were playing something rapidly, we would rake our fingers across the string. So if I were to do like an arpeggio, so I would rake and go back to alternate picking, even though I could alternate with that. So guitarists do the same thing with their alternate picking for economy of motion. And what that says is, if you're moving to a lower string, you're going to use a downstroke. If you're moving to a higher string, you're going to use an upstroke. So it looks something like this. If I were to go down, it would be a downstroke. And then going descending would be an upstroke. And what they call that economy of motion, because instead of going past a string and then back down, it's just one continual motion. So let me show that to you again. So you want to do it that way, as opposed to like maintaining the alternate picking where it might be, an upstroke. It just makes it a little bit, it's more efficient. So you may want to consider using the economy of motion in your picking. The final thing that I want to cover is palm muting, because a lot of people use palm muting. In palm muting, you take the thicker part of your hand and you lay it just in front of the bridge. And when you do that, the picking technique that I was telling you about of using your arm just goes out the window, because you can't do that anymore. And so it's a little bit more of a wrist movement, and it gives you a very nice percussive sound. If you notice, I'm rolling my hand as I go through. So, just some things to consider, when using a pick. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message, and I will respond as soon as possible. Thanks. Bye.